Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WOWBIZ Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Innovate to be great. That's what we're going to talk about here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. Thank you for tuning in. This is a very pertinent and timely topic that we're discussing today. It's being brought to you by Alpha Tech One, computer repair, as well as Curzon Promotional Graphics. We'll talk to you about both of them later on in the show, but we want to thank them because they've been very, very helpful insofar as getting this show on the air, and we look forward to that. Speaking of looking forward, that was a pretty good segue.
That was very good.
I'm looking forward to visiting with Bruce Arendt. Thanks for joining us here on WOWBIZ Nebraska, Bruce.
Thank you.
You bet. Especially the nature of this show is so pertinent to the state of Nebraska. I think we've talked about this before.
Right.
So we're going to talk about innovation. And what is it? Why should we do it? What are the implications of it? How do you do it? And why aren't more people doing it? So I'm just going to start with one statistic. Okay. Kind of an interesting way to start.
Throw it out there.
Right. 80% of all business owners will tell you that they believe innovation is, very important, a priority. Maybe number 2 in their overall set of priorities. Yeah. And yet only 33% of those same business owners think that they will even get it done in 5 years. In the next 5 years, they still don't think that they can innovate.
It seems, unattainable or unattainable, or
well, that's what I want to ask you about. Why do you think there is such a massive gap between? It's like they understand theoretically, they've seen the results of innovation in the marketplace, broadly speaking, and yet so many don't think that they can actually do that.
I would guess that probably the reason is people. Once you're in, let's say you're in a business that you've been in forever and ever, maybe it's a family business that's been around or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's very successful, everything's going great, and you just know this is the process to get from A to Z, and that's what you do. And the thought of doing something different, you wouldn't even know exactly where to begin. I think that's the whole thing. You wouldn't know where to start. You don't even know what innovation even really means or what it would look like.
I think you're right. I think it's kind of a broad word, but they don't know specifically where in the world they would even begin to understand.
It's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, exactly. And so maybe we'll spend just a little bit of time on this show here, kind of getting, if you give them a sense of where to begin and how other people have succeeded, that might be helpful. Here's the primary reason, all right? They have to go to bed at night and realize that of all the main strategies that a company has, we'll tick them off. They're lower prices, right? Higher quality product,
right?
All right.
Shipping,
quick delivery, getting it done quickly,
right?
What we call voice of the customer. In other words, you feel like you're really tuned in and you really do understand what the customers want. These are all various strategies. Whatever they are, innovation is 150% more profitable. Okay? So if you spend $100 on selling, we'll just say generically, if you're innovating, you'll get back 150 on that 100. Okay? That's an important thing for you to remember. That's the answer to why should we do it? We're doing okay, Because what happens is most companies over time, they want to get the prices up. They want to raise their profit margins. They want to keep, and they're on that trajectory.
Right.
But many, many companies actually, the prices and profit margins go down. Because their success attracts competitors.
Right. Everybody sees them making money. And
somebody down the road says, we'll beat that price. We do pretty much the same thing, but we're a little cheaper. Fine, you do it,
And they promote the fact that they're a little cheaper.
Sure. So, and then you want to defend your customer base. Yeah. Well, we'll beat that. We'll give it to you at an extra price, whatever. Right. And over time, your margins cascade. But what they're supposed to do is go up as you develop. Right. You're supposed to be cultivating loyal customers that will, and this is, I want to tell our audience, this is the key thing, key idea in this whole show. If you remember, people will have to pay more for your service. In other words, if some people say, I could get that guy's business for this amount of money, but I will pay extra, to work with that guy.
Because there's something special. There's something
special.
Some benefit,
The word that I've heard recently is it's meaningfully unique. Meaningfully now.
Right.
We've talked about innovation before, you and I, Bruce, and sometimes we think about, well, it's creative, it's creativity, artistic,
But it's beyond that.
It's got to be meaningful and actionable, something you can do something with.
Right.
I think
people have to see that they have to have that. They're attracted to it because it's going to benefit them and it makes their life easier and all of that. It's not just about lower prices. That's not the only.
And it's more than just the cool factor,
Right,
although
right.
increasingly the cool factor actually does become, it's interesting, almost every company in many industries they have products that functionally work about the same.
Mm-hmm.
They do pretty much the same thing. And if that's the case, you can actually gain a significant edge if you can inject the cool factor. Right. What maybe your advertising, maybe the showroom, maybe it's for instance, years ago, I helped a company, finish this up, helped the company revitalize its culture and its sales. We painted the entire office orange.
Wow.
And the website was orange, and the business cards were orange. And they were kind of high-tech orange. They had kind of a high-tech look to them and various little lines and stuff like that. So it really had a cool look.
Cohesive branding.
The whole thing was rebranded, and people were like, wow, you guys are young, you're hip, I want to work with you, even though their services really had not changed one iota.
Yeah. You think about cell phones. You're all, every one of them you can make a phone call to mom, but it's those who come up with the different features and all that sort of thing that are trying to, like, the Apple phones, that sort of thing.
Yes, absolutely. And the number of this is an interesting thing you've just made. This is a great point. So I'm going to give you a classic theoretical, okay?
Okay.
Companies come in like iPhone back in the 80s and 90s, right? And then 2000s, I guess 2004 or 5 was when they really took off. And what they're doing is, again, they keep making them more complex, more sophisticated, bigger screens, more features. Okay. Now, if you want to compete in that market, you're probably not going to be able to come in with a cell phone that's fancier and cooler. The key idea is that there's a ton of people, by the way, older people in some cases, that want a simple cell phone.
Something simple. I just want to make a call.
Just want to make a call. Just want to touch one button, maybe two at the most. And in every market, it's that way. Every industry, there's 2 or 3 companies that become more sophisticated. They add all these cool things, neat things, but they leave a certain portion of the market behind. And so people say, hey, we could get a cheap phone in there, skim it down, and sell it to all these people that are intimidated by all these features.
Right. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that whole thing where you downscale it and make it more accessible to people.
Yes, right. Now we'll go further with that. Let's say over the course of 5-10 years, just for the heck of it, okay? So here's the fancy iPhone and Samsung and several of the other ones that are just bam, 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 and then there are the other ones down here that are maintaining, kind of doing the simple one. But here they come as well, see? And so you have the incumbents up here saying, what should we do about these stripped down cell phone manufacturers that seem to be doing pretty good? And some of our audience is going to them.
I bet they go
right,
that's down the chain.
Exactly, so then sometimes they get up there and they get too pricey and they get too expensive.
Yeah.
Here comes another player saying, here we are, we're going to do stripped down, simple again, and we're going to eat away at the bottom of their customer base.
Because it's a huge base.
It's a huge base. You think about, again, I talk about older people, some of them are on fixed incomes and so on. They don't want to spend $300 on a cell phone every month or whatever,
Yeah.
And so that's understandable. They have a very real need there. So anyway, this is a very interesting thing, innovation. And particularly here in Nebraska, this is WOWBIZ Nebraska. And I was going to tell you, in fact, I think what we'll do is we'll talk about this at the second half of the show.
Okay.
There are so many companies that are doing well in this state. The question is, how do you motivate them to innovate when they already have so much business and the customers are good and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
And what happens is they sink into mediocrity and they are still doing financially okay.
Right.
So it becomes a real interesting opportunity for a fast, lean, little company just start nibbling away at the edges.
Because there are those out there who are more nimble. It's like a speedboat as opposed to an ocean liner.
Yes,
They can
right.
make the turns, they can react a lot quicker.
I think so.
And that can, eventually affect the bigger machine.
Exactly right. At the back end of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about leaders.
Okay.
And the role of leaders as it relates to this topic of innovation. Because, it's so related to, your view of the future, And I know that, sometimes when I visit with management teams about this general topic and innovation and so on, it's interesting to me, most of them don't have much of a view about the future. I'm very, very surprised, because I would have thought they would have kind of been studying who's doing what, and the trends are converging, and where are we going to be in 3 years,
The thing that I've seen in companies too is where you've got some of, let's say not necessarily, let's say some of the younger employees.
Yes.
They want to move forward, they want to do something, and you have to have buy-in from the top.
Yes.
And if you don't have the buy-in from the very top leadership in the company, you're not going to go anywhere, because they're going to squelch it and say, hey, we've always done it this way, we're going to keep doing it. But that's a big problem. When there's a new vision within the company, it can get squelched pretty easily.
It really is. So culture is extremely important to this innovation,
huge.
right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But the interesting thing is risk. See, and they'll always say, well, we're already making a lot of money. Why would I risk my existing cash flow, my profit margins? I might have to go out and hire 1 or 2 extra people to kind of manage your innovation initiative. That's a big deal.
It's a huge risk, because it's sort of intangible at that stage, right?
It really is. And you got to allow yourself to experiment and not let it really bother you if you fail.
I was just going to say, management has to be willing to let people fail. And It's easy to say that on the front end. Oh yeah, we're willing to let you make mistakes.
That's
right. When the rubber hits the road,
that's right.
Do they really? Because some of them do, and those that do, they'll make it through the quagmire of all of that, because it's always hard to innovate. In terms of really coming up with the right slot.
Yes.
But you think of people like Thomas Edison or Colonel Sanders, people who failed and failed and failed. Now, they didn't have a bunch of employees necessarily that they were trying to lead through this. They were on their own.
That's right.
However, the same principle applies. If a company made as many mistakes as those guys did, everybody would be fired probably.
Right.
But look where they ended up. They were huge successes.
And what does that really say about the size of your innovation team? Maybe it should be as small as possible.
Maybe.
And somewhat powerful, actually.
Yeah.
Because what you don't want is somebody over here at the other end of the building saying, shut those guys down. They haven't done anything good recently or whatever.
Right.
And that's a very sad state of affairs. But I think you're right. The notion of, I hate to say this because somebody will hold it up in front of me down the road, but a sense of playfulness. A sense of, well, what if we did this and we said that, and then how would that work? It could work. Let's give that a try, without going through lots of bureaucracy and meetings and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. I know.
And I know that is an extremely important quality. But as soon as we get done with this little promotional portion, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about culture and leaders as that relates to an innovation initiative.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. You're doing an outstanding job with me here today, and I couldn't get by without you. I appreciate it so very, very much. We're going to talk a little bit about your career and what you're doing as well on your end of the world. Okay. Because you're an innovator as well, my goodness. All right, so we want to talk to you today briefly about Curzon Promotional Graphics. I have to say something to you. They are an early supporter and sponsor of WOWBIZ Nebraska. That's fantastic. We appreciate that greatly. They're an Omaha-based firm. But here's what I want you to think about. In this world, so many things coming at you so rapidly, so much knowledge, so many 83 emails a day we all get. I don't know if you know that. That's an interesting statistic.
Is that the average?
83 emails every day is what we are all experiencing. So we're all overwhelmed. If somebody wants to knock on our door and introduce themselves, we don't even have time because there's so much stuff flowing through. So here's the point I'm trying to make. You need, if can relate to this whole thing, you need a visual, right? A provocative, cool, interesting, that you can tell a story about.
Something that stops you at that point so that you can you know, you can focus on that.
Exactly. Got to be a stopper. Right.
You have to stop people.
That's right. And Curzon Promotional Graphics understands that, so they can help you, you know, obviously do your prospecting, your lead generation, increase your sales, and so on and so forth. And they have the selectivity and the creativity to develop that image for you, whether it's a teeny one in your email or some massive backdrop like this beautiful backdrop right here.
That does look nice.
Oh, man. So anyway, go Curzon Promotional Graphics. That's C-U-R-Z-O-N. Please check them out. Now, this next sponsor, you know how excited I am talking about them because I talk about innovation, right? This leads right into the show. Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to innovate when you say, let's see who's doing well. Oh, delivery of grocery stores. Oh, delivery of restaurants. I'm in the computer repair business. I think I'm going to deliver.
Yeah.
Right. So Alpha Tech One will go to your office, to your home, pull all the cords out, get everything all packed up, take it back to their offices or take it back to their repair bench, call you and say, here's what we found, here's what the deal is, fix it, affordably by the way, and bring it back to your home or office and install it. I think that's a wonderful, clear-cut, value-added innovation.
Well, and they're taking away the intimidation of unhooking the cords and then knowing which ones go where.
And of course we procrastinate on doing all that, you know.
Right.
Nobody really wants to climb back there
No.
and go through that whole thing.
So that's brilliant.
And then we're also embarrassed when they say, well, what seems to be the problem? You know, it's like, well, I screwed it up and my 4-year-old baby messed this keyboard.
Yeah.
So Alpha Tech One, Alpha Tech One, Alpha Tech One, that's ONE.com at the back end. So give them a call, they'll do you a great job. They're very reliable and timely. That would be the point, right? All right, so we're back here at WOWBIZ, Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker with Bruce Arendt. We're talking about innovation. It's a big subject. We've tried to give you some of the key points about why you should innovate, more profitable, right? And the components that make up innovation, which, by the way, leads to intelligence and learning, you know. The companies that are most innovative, thus more profitable, have learning sessions. They actually measure how much they know. You know, it's very interesting when you meet with an executive, you know, and you're busy and he's answering the phone or she is, whatever you say. What was the last book you read?
Oh. And they read several a month.
Right. I mean,
or a week.
they have an answer to that question.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just picked this up. I read it 10 years ago, but it's really helping me take care of this, this, and this. You know, that's great. But so many people these days are so busy, they really don't have any organized form of learning. They're not, for instance, business models. Right? That's a good topic. Yeah, we're talking about innovation. There's 9 components, 9 aspects, competitiveness, et cetera, you know, in a business model. And you should, you should examine your business model and think about it, you know, a couple times a year. You know, and that's a very, very intense thing to do.
The other thing that people do that are successful are they pay attention to the world around them. I think of a company, I think it's called Tom's Shoes.
Oh,
This fellow went
well
on
known.
I think he went on initially went on a trip to, was it South America or something, and noticed kids that didn't have shoes. And he went back to actually try to remedy the problem by giving away a pair of shoes for every shoe that is sold.
Yes.
But he promotes it that way so people know that they're doing something good. I mean, that's pure innovation, I think.
It absolutely
But he
is.
paid attention to the situation. He looked around him and said, here's a problem I'm going to pay attention to.
But what would the average business owner say if Tom came to somebody who owned his company?
Right.
So I'd like to give away a pair of shoes to everybody in Africa for every pair of shoes that we buy and sell. What would the average business owner say to such a thing?
We can't repeat it on air. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Are you crazy?
Yeah,
Right?
It doesn't make sense on the surface, but
But it makes
makes deep sense in actuality. It really
Absolutely. And especially with the millennials and the Gen Z that are coming along, they really care about.
They want to be invested into something.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
That makes sense. That has value and purpose.
And that has such a psychological strength, I guess I should say. You know, and
very powerful.
Very interesting. So that's a great example, by the way. You know, I want to talk to you a little bit about something called blue ocean strategy.
Okay.
Anybody that is looking or thinking about innovation should know about this. I did a seminar in Lincoln, Nebraska about this a few months back, and so I kind of dove into it, you know, really tried to learn it and so on. A couple brilliant people at Harvard, predictably, put this all together. But the basic idea there is very significant in the context of our conversation. What they basically talk about, red ocean is a bloody ocean.
Okay.
And a bloody ocean is about cost cutting and slashing your prices to compete with some other guy down the street who does what you do, and he's slashing his prices. And every time we're slashing our prices and our margins, the blood is roiling in the ocean. Okay. And most of us operate in a red ocean environment.
Yeah,
we
makes
really
sense
do.
when you think about that.
That's right. So these people said, we want to move you over into the blue ocean area, which means, let me show you if I can say this correctly, which means that your product or the expertise that you have can be used to sell to a whole segment of people that aren't even in your category. For instance, laser printers.
Okay.
We talked about that.
Yeah.
Xerox and many people back in the 70s and 80s. You know, they're selling very expensive, high-end laser printers, kicking them out to all big companies had to have a laser
About
printer.
the size of a car.
Yeah, I mean, they're very large and sophisticated. You're
Right.
you're right. And they were expensive. I don't know.
Yeah.
$8,000,
Thousands.
$10,000,
Oh,
you know, in some cases and all that. But so all the businesses were just, everybody had to have one, and you had to take a big gulp before you paid for it. But over here were all these small guys, entrepreneurs, freelancers, students, all those people. And they wanted a printer or a copier as well. Okay, copier was really the primary function initially.
Right.
And of course they can't afford a $10,000 unit. So Canon, and there were others who came along eventually, reinvented the printer copier category and came up with a compact one, somewhat, and much less expensive.
Yeah.
Something you buy for $500 or something like that.
Attainable.
Attainable, carried around in your car when you want to, whatever you want to do. And people were scratching their heads and said, I would have never thought. You know, we're over here playing in this. This is the sandbox we're playing in, this high-end, sophisticated. It never occurred to us that there were millions of people over here that would want a copier. We didn't even go out and figure out how our technology could be scaled to serve their
It
needs.
seems so obvious now.
It
but at
does.
the time, it was
Right.
groundbreaking.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, just having heard that thing, what example would there be for that? You know, in other words, what else? Who else could do that? You know, and think about, there's a whole ignored segment of the marketplace that wishes they could have what these people have, kind of, you know, but they would want their kind, and they're not even being served in the least.
That's a fascinating question. I mean, it is. I mean, because
It really is.
it's going on. It's
Yeah.
out there. It's like unpicked fruit.
Yeah, I'm going to throw out one example. I don't know that this is exactly the right answer. Well, try.
Okay.
You tell me if I'm right. You know, you're seeing all these little scooters up and riding around
Yeah.
in Midtown and so
Right.
on, mostly young people, and they're zooming around, and these are very lightweight, not terribly safe, by the way,
No.
but they're bopping around, and they're using them for transportation. You know, what do you think the car dealers are thinking? Maybe these people won't be interested. Maybe their transportation needs are being satisfied with this right here.
That's interesting. I just had a thought when you were saying that.
Yeah.
What about something for the older population? Maybe
Yes.
with 3 wheels. That doesn't seem
Quite
like
as dangerous?
Right, quite as dangerous. You know?
Yeah,
Something like what you'd see in the grocery store,
Now,
but a little cooler than that.
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
but no, I
fast-
think that, see, now what would that be? That would be sustained, now you're into that category, that scooter, little scooter category.
Yeah.
So somebody comes on and says, we're going to jump into that category, we're going to have a three-wheeler for,
Right.
So that would be called sustainable
Oh, okay.
innovation, right? Where you're making a small little enhancement, you add a third wheel or whatever,
Right.
and then you go. Now that's not disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation is just the scooter in
The
general.
scooter itself.
Right,
is
because
disruptive.
car dealers are saying, whoa, come on over here, drop 30 grand with me, instead of renting this thing for
With your phone.
$10 with your
Right.
phone.
That
amazing.
is disruptive.
It is disruptive.
Yeah. In a good way.
Yes, in a good way. So I'm just saying, there are all kinds of opportunities around us to innovate. We just get used to the status quo, and our needs are being met, so we don't push ourselves to really think about some other way. And that's really, you know, we talked before about Nebraska, which is a statewide
Right.
training initiative. And I don't want to turn this into a commercial for Nebraska, but nevertheless, these are the kinds of things you would want to discuss in a business training environment, right?
Yeah, because you'd be spurred to think about innovation.
Innovation, man, and they've got then they can do something new and unique and exciting and succeed, get a 15%, 20% increase in sales profits, then they need some help. Then they go back and say, let's advertise for some of these people in Kansas or Chicago or Denver and ask them to come back to Nebraska. Because we're innovating, baby. You know, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do I sound like a crazy heretic? Yeah. Okay, well, that's all right. The energy is right anyway, if I'm not expressing it as well as some people could. But that's the general idea here today. And I just want to assure our customers and our viewers that innovation is great. Innovation is achievable. There's a process. It can be done a variety of ways. But you really do have to put some leadership and some attention into it. Mm-hmm. It's not just going to happen just because you've taken a class or read a book.
Right. You have to actually apply yourself and pay attention.
Yeah. Otherwise, you'll get cynical and say, innovation, that doesn't matter. Because Harry down there is already busy. He's working 50 hours a week. You can't ask Harry to say, oh, by the way, would you go over here and do this innovation stuff?
I think that's a key point, too. You have to stick with trying, even when things aren't working out, even when you're failing. If one idea fails, okay, so that didn't work. Find another one that does.
Frankly, probably if you're not failing, you're not pushing hard enough.
Well, exactly.
You're not out on the edge saying, well, this would be really the way to create value.
Yeah.
You know? So
again, it's the Edison and Colonel Sanders thing.
It is.
You just keep swinging the bat till you hit something, you know?
Bruce, Aaron, thank you so much for helping me. You've elaborated here and helped me really understand. I'm not sure I even understand the topic until I visit with you and then I go, I think I get it, actually. I actually think I know. So thanks so much for being here. Thank you for watching WOWBIZ, Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker. See us next time. We're going to get into it deep. I appreciate your help. And give us some feedback whenever you see us on YouTube or on Cox 22. Thanks again. Bye-bye. Thank you.